Hey yo, folks! Welcome to Today we're looking at Lego Star Wars set number 7539, the TIE Fighter and X-Wing Mashup. This set released in 2024, retailing for a pricey $110, containing 1,063 pieces and 5 minifigures. Now, this is an interesting and kind of weird set, which is meant to be based off of LEGO's original Rebuild the Galaxy series, which I did actually take some time to watch the series just to get a bit of context, which I will say some stuff from the series whilst refraining from saying spoilers and all that for anyone who might be interested. But anyways, let's get straight to the review, shall we? For the first of our two builds, we of course have the TIE Fighter, which it does kind of have a bit of a smaller type of build. I imagine this is basically a similar sizing to the one that came out in, I think it was 2023, which I didn't get, but I imagine it to be a similar size. You got the two wings at the side here, which are pretty nicely detailed, though I don't know why these have no studs while these have studs. I feel like maybe there's a piece we could have used instead of these pieces, but that's just me. On the back, you see it's the pretty detailed. I do love these macaroni curve pieces, and you got the engines here to have the TIE Fighter going, which I will get back to that later. And you, of course, got the stud shooters, which we'll fire that later. But let's look at the front again, where you could just see the front, obviously. Where you got this is where the blasters normally would be, but I'll get to that more shortly. But here's basically the cockpit, which you lift up, and you could just simply slide a figure here. You let me position it so you could roughly see it has like those. I'm not sure what they call this type of piece, but you could see. And let me actually get the TIE Fighter pilot so that way you can get a better look at how it fits, which it does fit rather nicely. Let me just shimmy it on in like that and shablam. Yeah, it is a bit tight compared to previous adaptations, but it gets the job done, which as you can see there's the top with how it's done, which I do find it weird. Like I feel like we could have had like a dome piece, kind of like how they did the windscreen, rather than just have this be a cut off sticker, which is just kind of displeasing to look at. I feel like the build could have been done better here. It's interesting that they also choose this type of cockpit where it looks like you could look into there, but not really. I mean, they did do something similar to the TIE Bomber, but I sort of understand. And I do feel like this could have been a bit better and bigger, but on the other hand, I do kind of understand since you do got two vehicles in the set, but otherwise, this is a pretty decent build, although it is a bit flawed in some parts, like with the where you got two blasters here where the TIE Fighter is supposed to shoot through here, if I recall correctly, but I probably don't know as much as the average Star Wars fan, even though I'm kind of into Star Wars, but not like super in. But we will get back to that, where we'd also talk about the bottom, where you got these two little pins at the sides, which we will get back to that. Well, there's the spring-loaded shooter part, but yeah, we will get back to these in the part after the X-Wing and all that, but yeah. Before we go, let's just do another one. That was kind of anticlimactic, but it did land on my lap. But anyways, let's get on to the next part right now. And for our next build, we have, of course, the X-Wing itself, which I do feel like this is both big and small at the same time. I mean, like I said, I didn't get the TIE Fighter or X-Wing from 2023. I think that was the year, but I do feel like this is kind of a mixture of the size of the 2023 one as well as the previous adaptations, but I do feel like it's a decent size, though it is, of course, lacking. Like, you can see, like, the engines here. Usually there's, like, something in the engines, whether it be a pick or something to kind of give it that look and all that, but they lack it there. You, of course, got some stickers, like, here, and you got them on the wings, even though you don't have anything on the bottom, as you can see, which, let me see if I can get the bottom in the camera, which there's nothing special aside from the two pins where you could see my thumb is. I do find it interesting how the bottom has the spring-loaded shooters, but the top doesn't. When usually in most of the TIE Fighter sets, that's the case, where you have studs on the top and the bottom. Spring-loaded on the top and the bottom. But usually, if I recall correctly, the X-Wing from 2023 had like a stud shooter at the side where you'd have the torpedo firing. But oddly enough, this set lacks that, which I do feel like in this case they should have had it. Especially, we'll get into that later on, but let's take a look at the back where you can see the engines as well as this piece. It's so weird seeing without that X-axle piece. I don't know what it's called, but I'll surely put it on screen in editing. But yeah, you can see the back is pretty decent. I do kind of like it, but at the same time, it's a bit weird seeing it without the X-axle. Although sometimes it could be up here, which is pretty decent. You also got the little place where you could put the droid in, which actually, while we're in the back, we'll just take a look at the wings, which, unlike most X-Wings, this X-Wing has the wings fold out individually. Oops, there's a stud shooter again. Why do I keep calling it a stud shooter? It's a spring-loaded shooter. Come on, me. But rather than folding them all at once, for this X-Wing, you just got to do them each individually. It kind of does it with the landing gear on, but it's a bit awkward. But yeah, let's close those back up, which, I mean, if you do it like the way I did, you could close them at once. Which, yeah, you do got landing gear here. I do, if I recall correctly, they don't have much landing gear in the sets, but in the other X-Wings, but here you got, like, 3 legs. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Let's actually take one look at the cockpit, where you got, which is pretty simple. You do got the regular red printing. I'm trying to get that on the screen. Just the basic printing, nothing special. Something you'd see in most Star Wars sets, but before we move on to the next section, let's actually get the droid and the pilot in, which I do feel like the droid would normally, in most sets, be not sticking out as much, but that might be based on memory. I feel like maybe they'd be just a little more hidden, but that might be me. But let's get the pilot, and then we're good to go. So that way you can see how the pilot fits and all that. Like so, and blam, look at that. If it's nice and snug, as you can see. Aside from the few flaws, I do think this is a pretty decent X-Wing set. I do feel like maybe if it had a little bit of upgrades, it would be a good X-Wing, but otherwise I understand. I will point out one flaw that does kind of bug me, which, as you can see here, there's a bit of a gap. Let me see. Oh, something fell. As you can see, there's a bit of a gap, which is understandable because you got the sides here, which are being held by some supports, as you can see. It's held with these rods here, but if you put them in all the way, they don't fully go in like so. At least not without making the sides weird, which I do feel like they should have done something to make the build a little better, or at least had one of those, I'm forgetting, it's like one of those flat rounded pieces, I don't remember the name, but aside from all the flaws and all that, this is a pretty decent X-Wing, though I feel like the other X-Wings are far superior, but at the same time, I think this is fine for what you get. I feel like if you had a couple of upgrades, like here and there, like at the stud shooters as well as the spring-loaded shooters, hey, I got it right this time, we'd be good to go. But anyways, let's move on to our next segment where we look at a couple of other things real quick. Now, if you've noticed a few things while looking at both vehicles, they have 2 pins at the bottom, both of them, which I'll show you why it's called the Mashup, which I will get into the lore and all that as soon as I can, but let's take a look at how it all works. So first you're going to grab one of the vehicles, you're going to grab the pin out, and then you're going to grab the other pin out. You can grab one or the other, but you just simply pull the wing off like so. Gotta be careful so I don't fully break it, and here we go. Look at that. Look at that. And now we just pull the other wing off. And then you do the same thing. But first, let's just look at this little cockpit. Just a lonely cockpit. So lonely. But then you do the same thing. Let's, grab this here. It's a little bit tricky with the X-Wing, especially while I'm recording a video. But we nailed it. Look at that. Look at that. And now, let's create something new. Let's, it's like doing the reverse of what we just did. We just push it into the hole. As you can see, there's obviously a hole, though I think you've already seen that. And then you put the pin back in, like so. Blam. And then you repeat. And blam. And now you've got a new vehicle. But you still gotta do the other one, so let's do that right now. Both sides are pretty much the same, so you can't really just Just push it in like so. And do the same thing again. Or you could do it the way I'm doing. Like I said, with the previous times I done it, I just put the wing in, then put the pin. But this time I'm putting both wings in, then I'm putting the pins in, like so. Blam. Look at that. And now you got 2 new crazy vehicles. Wacky, isn't it? So before we get into details of both vehicles, again, technically, I'd like to share a little lore, which, for those who don't know, in the Rebuild of the Galaxy show, there's a couple of shenanigans. Like, our main character, who we'll get into soon, grabs something known as the Cornerstone, which, as a result of taking it out of a temple, it ends up completely rebuilding the galaxy. Roll the credits. Which causes a whole ton of things to happen. For example, vehicles get mixed up. You get Bounty Hunter Ewoks, Bounty Hunter C-3PO. You get Sith Kit Fisto and Sith Jar Jar Binks. Yes, and that is an actual minifigure. But that's just to name a few. And for example, and one of the more prominent vehicles you get is the X-Fighter, which is interesting. Like I said, I do feel like there could have been more firepower. Then again, if these were the stud shooters, we'd have more firepower. If you'd have these stud shooters on top, you'd have even more firepower. There's just a whole lot of firepower out of this vehicle. Though I will say with the legs, it's kind of awkward because I feel like you could just be like, or just like that. Otherwise, that's it. Which I do feel like in universe there are flaws. Like, for example, these, I've already said these would be the blasters, and back would be the engine. You got the engines of the XWing, and I'm pretty sure this technically wouldn't be able to fly because it has no engines to fly it. And you basically got no guns or anything to shoot aside from the stud shooters that Lego put on the TIE fighter wings to give it some firepower. Which I'm pretty sure these only really showed up in the last episode of the show, but I could be wrong. Whereas these were often shown. This would be a TIE wing, and that would be an X-Fighter. I do feel like this is kind of goofy, but I'm pretty sure that's the intent. Especially if you get the landing gear up, you might as well put that down. Though I feel like with the way it's built, usually most of the X-Wing type vehicles would have this hidden, but you don't really have it hidden much. Especially with this, unless you were to like flip the leg upside down. Maybe that'll do a difference. Just barely. But yeah, I'm surprised with the way it is, they're able to stay balanced. It's kind of a weird vehicle, but on the other hand, I get it to go along with the series and all that and all sorts of hijinks. But despite their flaws, I imagine Star Wars fans will see even more flaws with the vehicles. I do think this is a pretty decent vehicle. I do feel like this is a pretty good representation of the show and the set and all that, and I don't know what else to say. Except for, why don't we take a look at those minifigures right now? For the first row of minifigures, we have Dustin Henderson, who I think is just a really incredible minifigure, and I just think, wait a minute, this ain't the right minifigure. Get that out of here. Well, actually, I'm going to let it slide because this is actually a pretty valuable figure, but our actual figure is Sig Griebling, otherwise known as Siggy, who is the main protagonist of the Rebuild the Galaxy series, who does have some really nice printing, like on the front and on the legs, and he also has some printing on the back. You can see he's got scarfing, he's got a scarf on him, which I imagine some people think that we could have used the scarf mold, but at the same time, I feel with the hairpiece it wouldn't have quite worked, which, on the hairpiece, I do love how they give us a recolor of Luke's hairpiece, so that way we have more than just dark tan or brown in Jim's case. But for accessories, you do got like a herding staff, which in the show he's a nerf herder before the galaxy gets rebuilt, which this is also able to conduct electricity in a couple of scenes. Which the other accessory is the main object of the show, the Cornerstone, which is what causes the galaxy to get rebuilt, which is really nice to get. Though I do feel like it could have been like a bit darker, maybe with some sparkles, kind of like some of the Lego Movie 2 sets, but I digress. But anyways, for expression, he does have a nice head. I do like to get more heads and more different flesh colors, like this nougat color, which he does have a more calm and easygoing expression on the front, and on the back he does have a more shocked or worried type of expression, but yeah. this is just a really nice minifigure, and I'm glad to get some unique figures with some unique parts, and it's just really cool. I'm glad we were able to get this as a minifigure. One thing I'd like to mention is, with his name being Sig, I wonder if it's a reference to the phrase Sig Fig. For those who don't know, within the LEGO community, usually people have a minifigure to represent themselves, which would be their Sig Fig. So I'm wondering if maybe Sig is a reference to the phrase Sig Fig. Kind of like how in Clutch Powers there's a guy whose name was A-Fall. You also had something similar with Jedi Bob, but we'll get to that once we get that set. So anyways, let's move on to the next figure, who's also pretty unique themselves. For our next minifigure, we have Yessie Scala, who is one of the major protagonists who helps alongside Sig, which this is a really nice figure. It's also nice to get more dark-skinned figures, which, as you can see, she does have like a mixture of a tan and blue torso, though it's mostly blue, as you can see, to represent the top part of the jacket and all that. You also got some goggles, but you don't have any face printing representing her wearing the goggles, of course, which I do like the printing on the front and the back, of course. We'll look at that again. And for accessories, she does have a gafty stick. Oops. For accessories, she does have a gafty stick, which is often used for Tusken Raiders, which she does use on, I think it was the first episode, either the first or the second, but yeah. It's a nice build, though I do feel like we should get these molded at some point, so that way it just doesn't look so blocky, but that's just me. As you can see, here's what it looks like without her hairpiece, which I do believe this hairpiece was introduced with Monica Rambeau in the LEGO Marvel CMF, which it's nice to get more of this hairpiece. But as you can see, this is her expression. It's interesting how the bandana is kind of crooked, as you can see. And if you look on the back, she's got a more angry expression. And of course, the bandana is crooked, which, with me talking about the crooked bandana, it makes it sound like I have a big deal about it, which honestly I really don't. But anyways, this is a really cool figure, and it's nice to get her in a set. Though I feel like with this set, the next figures in the set are kind of basic in comparison to this and the last one, which I do wish we had some more unique figures, which I will get to that in the final part of the vid. But anyways, I do think this is a really nice figure, and I'm glad this figure was included. So let's move on to the next figure right now. For our next minifigure, we have the Rebel Pilot, which I will say this is just a basic figure. I mean, the only thing that's unique about this figure per se is the helmet. Otherwise, the head, torso, and legs are not really exclusive, because I did get the Yavin 4 base, and you do get the exact figure aside from the helmet, which the helmet does have some unique yet really cool printing. It's nice to get more of these Rebel helmets with different printing aside from the usual Luke Skywalker printing or the Biggs Darkliner or Dutch Vader or whoever else, but it's nice to get more of those. And you do got some back printing, as you can see, as usual. No leg or arm printing, not like the Luke Skywalker we got in the UCS XWing or the keychain, but yeah, it's nice to get some more pilots. And as you can see, he's got a smiling face on the front, and if you look on the back, you got a more determined expression, which is nice. And you obviously, he has a pistol for an accessory, so it's nice to get more of those. But I mean, this minifigure is pretty basic, but I do feel like it fits with the set, especially because of the X-Wing and all that. But yeah, it's nice to get more of these pilots. I do like the new helmet and all that. But anyways, I think it's time we take a look at the next figure, which I do feel like is more interesting in comparison. So let's take a look at that right now. And for our next figure, or droid in this case, we have an astromech droid who is called L3GO. For those who don't get it, it's basically Lego. Though you might as well make a McDonald's reference because of the color scheme, which is pretty cool. I do love the red body and the yellow legs, which these yellow legs do also come in the Shin Hades set. I'm not sure how her name's pronounced, but this is a really nice astromech droid. You do got printing on the front, however, you don't have printing on the back, kind of like the more modern R2-D2s where you'd have printing on the back and all that, but the head is fully printed, which is really nice. I do love the legs. You can see they're mobile and all that, which there's nothing else entirely unique about the figure aside from it being exclusive and a new figure, which is really cool to get more astromech droids that are unique and not just like regular R2-D2 or Obi-Wan's R2 unit, which I forgot the name of. I'll surely put it in the title, but yeah. It's nice to get more of these astromech droids that are unique for anyone's collection, which it's always nice to get more of those. I'm starting to repeat myself, but before I continue repeating myself, I will just say this is a really cool droid, and let's move on to the final figure. And last, and kind of least, we have a TIE Fighter pilot, which They do got some decent printing on the front and all that. You got the leg printing, no arm printing, of course, but you do got some back printing here. You can see there's a nougat head, which we're gonna get to that shortly. And you see they also got a pistol accessory, kind of like the X-wing pilot. And if you take off the helmet, which as you can see, it's pretty well printed. I like how they've been given more detailed printing compared to the first iteration of the molded helmet of the TIE fighter pilot. But if you take it off, you can see we got a not really exclusive female nougat head with a determined expression. I do believe this first came in the Snow Speeder battle pack, the Snow Trooper battle pack set, which it's nice to get more of this, though I do find it weird because if I recall correctly in the series, most of the Stormtrooper army was a bunch of Mon Calamari, the same species of Admiral Akbar, who don't know. So it's an interesting choice to have this be a human while most of the Stormtroopers or Clone Troopers or whatever are Mon Calamari. But I suppose it's nice to get more TIE fighter pilots for anyone's army or anything. But I do feel like we could have gotten either a different minifigure or just some more minifigures, which we're going to get to that real shortly. Which actually, why don't we take one last look at the set and talk about it right now? Overall, I do think this is a pretty decent set, even if to the normal fan it just looks like a confusing set, seeing both these sets mixed up like that. I will say, despite the design flaws in universe and build wise, I do think this is a pretty decent set and a easy way to get both the TIE Fighter and the X-Wing at once. But I do think the minifigures are pretty nice, though I do feel like with the Rebuild the Galaxy sets, we could have gotten some more unique figures, kind of like how in this show we got like a version of Darth Maul who's dressed like Lando, or Mace Windu, Grievous, and Yoda who are dressed in prisoner outfits, and just to name a few. But anyways, with the set, would I recommend this set? I mean, for the price of $110, I'm having a hard time recommending it. I feel like they could have like beefed up the builds or added some more minifigures just to make the price justifiable. But if you're able to get this set for a much more better price, then I would recommend this set. Because like I said, this is an easy way to get both the TIE Fighter and the X-Wing, or in this case, the TIE Wing and the X-Fighter. But I think this is a pretty decent set, especially if you actually like the show and want to get some figures based off the show, like these two important characters. But yeah, it's a not too bad of a set aside from the flaws. But I think that'll be all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment and all that because it helps, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.